Chapter 11 is called Vishwarup Darshan Yoga. Vishwarup Darshan Yoga, or the universal form, as given the title by Srila Prabhupada. So in this chapter, very interesting event happens, of course. Those of you who are familiar or remember from our course level 1, that Krishna here displays his universal form, or Virat Rup or Vishwarup, to Arjuna. And while we have discussed this in the past, and hopefully you might remember at least our primary example that we used, which we'll discuss today. Today we'll try to go a little bit deeper into the various moods between Sri Krishna and Sri Arjuna, and try to understand and relish those moods between the Lord and his devotee, as to why he would do such a thing, and why the devotee would request him to do such a thing. Because at the end of the day, this is we say the Lord has 4 primary characteristics by which one should meditate on. That is Nam, Rup, Guna, and Leela. Nam means name, Rup means form, Gun means quality or characteristics, and Leela means pastimes. So in this chapter, actually all of them are mentioned. Nam is mentioned by Sri Arjuna. Then Rup, of course, this is discussing one of his forms. Gun, then he also discusses within this form there are so many qualities. And then Leela, this entire event in itself is a pastime of the Lord. So we are going to try to understand those various things, both from we say from a tattva standpoint, that means a philosophical standpoint, and also a rasa standpoint, which is the moods or the emotions that are held between the Lord and his devotee. Does that sound good? Okay. In our previous classes, we always recite this prayer now for auspiciousness. So I would like to request all of you to recite this prayer, and then we can proceed. Sarvo Panishado Gavo Dugdha Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdham Gitamritam Mahat. Okay, Sonu Didi, would you like to read the translation?
This Gita Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita, is the essence of all the Upanishads. It is just like a cow, and Lord Krishna, who is famous as a cowherd boy, is milking this cow. First, he gives to Partha, Arjuna, who is just like a calf. Thereafter, the learned scholars and pure devotees drink the nectar and milk of Bhagavad Gita.
Wonderful. So here again, as we have discussed in the past, that it is not only giving us the process by which one can understand the Bhagavad Gita or the nectar, the Amrit within the Bhagavad Gita, which is through the parampara system, starting with Lord Krishna himself. So Lord Krishna is the original guru, and through his devotees, such as Sri Arjuna, then the relishers of the Bhagavad Gita can understand it through him. So Arjuna asks questions, Sri Krishna answers, and in these conversations, we also get that nectarian milk from the Bhagavad Gita. So this is the parampara system. All right, so we have also highlighted this slide multiple times now for several classes, ever since we started the discussion on Bhakti Yoga, which started in chapter 7. So here, we all know from the past chapters, and especially this chapter, that Sri Krishna is very, very powerful. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We all know this, we've heard it a million times. But more powerful than that is bhakti. More powerful than even the Lord himself is the love of God. That is because it is the love of God that controls that Supreme Personality. So when we have love within our hearts, then we can conquer everything. Not only can we conquer this material world, but we can also conquer the Supreme Creator himself. So pure bhakti is very, very powerful, and that should be our one and only desire. Last week we mentioned a verse that Krishna, Krishna Bhaktas, and Krishna Bhakti are the 3 treasures of life. That is the Lord himself, the devotees of the Lord, and the love of the Lord are the three treasures that one should strive for. And when Krishna becomes controlled by this love, then he behaves in a non-typical way or atypical way. Typically, we understand the Lord to behave in a certain way, especially before we understand Sri Krishna. Then we might see him as, oh, he sits on a chair with a gray beard and twitches his fingers and things happen. That's a conception that is often portrayed in the West. An old man sitting upstairs with a gray beard, wise, and maybe making everything happen just like this. But actually, he is completely opposite. He's a young cowherd boy, most simple occupation, which is cow herding, and he behaves in extraordinary ways in order to reciprocate love with his devotee. And some of those examples here, as you all have seen before and we have previously discussed. So I want you to keep this sort of statement and also thought in your mind as we progress today, that bhakti is more powerful than even the Lord himself. So last week we discussed many topics, and previously I used to ask you all if you remember, but since we missed last week, then I'm going to request you all to just jog your memory a bit, that we discussed that in Bhakti Yoga, throughout this process of learning in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna raised many objections. He raised many objections to Krishna whenever Krishna would try to tell him something. For example, he would say, oh, well, I can't control my mind. Controlling the mind is like controlling the wind. Then other times he said, oh, this seems impractical. How can you expect me to work without the desire of a paycheck? And various other impracticalities or difficulties Arjuna expressed as he spoke various different yogas. For example, Ashtanga Yoga. Oh no, Prabhu, I can't sit in one place. I can't meditate. I can't control my mind completely, etc., etc. So in this regard, but when Krishna describes Bhakti Yoga, then Arjuna has no objections. So that itself also signifies the importance and also the superiority of Bhakti Yoga over other processes. Not that those processes are not valid, because whatever Krishna says is valid and it is true, but that those processes are more difficult. Then secondly, we also learned that bhakti has many side effects. And oftentimes many devotees pay attention to those side effects more than the actual thing. For example, bhakti could have the side effect of giving one material objects. For example, you can obtain anything by performing bhakti to the Lord. You could obtain material things. You could obtain subtle things like fame. You can also attain other subtle things like lack of fear. And then we study that in Srimad Bhagavatam, when Krishna departs, then Arjuna expresses, do you guys remember this? Arjuna expresses that he became very weak. He becomes weak without the presence of Krishna because he's expressing his separation mood from Krishna. Actually, he's eternal associate. He doesn't become weak in any way. But because he is expressing his separation mood, therefore he has no desire, therefore, to become a warrior, to become a king. Instead, he simply wants to associate with his dear friend, Sri Krishna. So some side effects are there, like, for example, having no fear. But we should take these as side effects, not as the goal, right? So we don't want to necessarily say, let me perform bhakti so that I become fearless in this world, so that I become happy in this world, because we are then placing conditions on bhakti, right? Instead, bhakti is simply for the pleasure of Sri Krishna and nothing else. If he is pleased, then it doesn't matter what happens to us. Then we also learned that he is the source of all, and we studied Chatur Shloki Gita, the 4 important verses of the Bhagavad Gita. That is the essence of all Gita. And in that first verse of Chatur Shloki Gita, Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate. That everything emanates from me and I am the source of all creation. So Krishna is the source, and in this chapter he will prove it. One is to talk, the other is to, what do they say? Walk the walk. One is to talk the talk, the other is to walk the walk. So in this chapter, Krishna walks the walk. And that is encouraged by Arjuna, and we'll discuss why that happens. And then finally, we asked a question towards the end of the class saying, how do we actually know that we love someone? Do you guys remember that question? Does anybody remember the answer that we came up with? We came up with a variety. I asked each and every one of you to remember the person you love. And what is it that you do when you're in love? And we talked about that kind of love when you first meet them, not the one that's 20 years later in marriage. That you're like, oh yeah, I love you because you made dinner tonight. Not that love. The love where you're obsessed, right? You're obsessed. And what do you want to do when you're in love? You want to do something for them? Yes. What other things did we come up with?
Always thinking about them.
You're always thinking about them? What else? All of you have been in love. Remember I said it's a blessing to fall in love in this world.
Completeness.
Completeness, yes, completeness. I know we're not that old.
Doing things for their happiness.
Doing things for their happiness, that's right. What else? We like to talk about them. We like to hear about them. We like to think of them. Whenever we see something related to them, we always think of them. Or even when we don't see anything related to them, then we try to find something that is related to them. So when we love someone, when we're obsessed with someone, when we are, some people in this world say when we are pagal, when we are crazy about someone, then all we want to do is engage our senses, our mind, our everything in that someone. And so Arjuna, he says the same thing in the last chapter. There he says, "O Krishna, how shall I constantly think of you?" Right? "And how shall I know you? In what various forms are you to be remembered, O Supreme Personality of Godhead? O Janardhan, again, please describe in detail the mystic power of your opulences. I am never satiated, I'm never satisfied in learning about you, for the more I hear, the more I want to taste the nectar of your words." So here, Arjuna is expressing his sentiment, right? He's not asking or requesting a philosophical question or an answer to a problem. He's just saying, Prabhu, I just want to hear more about you. Tell me more, tell me more. So when we have this feeling, then we can understand that this is our progress in bhakti. So there's a very famous verse that discusses this greed. Greed. Now greed is often characterized as a negative quality. Yeah, we say we don't want to be greedy. But in bhakti, we want to use every single what appears to be negative quality even in the service of the Lord. And therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami is a very famous verse from Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu and also from Padyavali, where he says, Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita Matihi Kriyatam Yadi Kutopi Labhyate Tatram Laulyam Apimulyam Ekalam Janmakoti Sukritram Na Labhyate. Prajot, would you like to read the translation?
Pure devotional service and Krishna consciousness cannot be had even by pious activity in hundreds and thousands of lives. It can be attained only by paying one price, that is intense greed, to obtain it. It is available somewhere, one must
If it is available somewhere.
If it is available somewhere, one must purchase it without delay.
All right. So, this verse is very powerful because many people think that performing pious activity, can somebody give me an example of pious activity? Donations, yeah. Charity? Prayers. Prayer, is that a pious activity? What's the difference between a pious activity and a limb of bhakti or an activity related to bhakti? Very important. Because it says Janma Koti Sukriti. Sukriti, we've used that word. Sukriti, does anybody know what koti means? Koti, dandavat pranam. Thousands, millions, lots. And janma means births. So lots of births you can take doing sukriti, doing pious activities. What's a pious activity? This is really important to understand. You said charity is one example.
Pious activity is one where you're doing it like there's karma involved in, and you're getting something in return out of it.
Okay.
You're the doer, you're doing it. there is some sort of expectation.
There's a sort of expectation. Even if one does it without expectation, there's a sort of what kind of benefit? What kind of benefit do you get from doing a pious activity like charity? A material benefit. For example, you may become rich in your next life, right? You gave somebody something, then nature, prakriti, karma, everything rewards you back in the next life or maybe even in this one's life. Any other example you can think of pious activity? Helping people, great, like building a hospital, donating food, maybe helping someone on the street, giving them education, etc., etc. These are helping their bodies, right? Helping their bodies. So when we do sukriti, good actions, then we can do that for hundreds and thousands of lives, but you may not get pure bhakti. That's very, very hard to digest. Very hard to digest. Because we think that we should do good activities, which we should. That's not what the verse is saying, don't do good activities. It's simply saying that the fruit of that is not going to be bhakti. The fruit of bhakti is Krishna Prem, right? And the way to obtain it, Rupa Goswami is saying, by paying one price. So in this world, everything, or at least many things, can be bought by money. But in this world, the only currency that works is greed for it. Greed for it. And therefore, Rupa Goswami says, if it is available somewhere, one must purchase it without delay. So in essence, if we have greed in the heart, for what? That I want to learn more about Krishna. I want to love Krishna. I will pay anything for it. Then that is a symptom and the measure of our progress. So when we develop greed in our heart, that's when we can progress in bhakti. Just like, I guess in business, we're taught in our MBA school, subtly, nobody ever says it directly, but in our business school, subtly we're taught to be greedy. More and more revenue, more and more profit, more and bigger business, etc. Right? We don't call it greed there. We call it, this is the duty of a businessman. Yeah? I remember one of my professors, he said, the goal of a business is what? And everybody thought of different things, to benefit society, to hire people, whatever. He said, no. The goal of a business is to earn profit. That's it. Everything else you want to do with that profit, that's up to you. But the goal of a business is to earn profit. So similarly, the goal of a devotee is to increase one's greed inside the heart, but greed for that spiritual love. Yes, Prabhu?
Isn't greed a very negative word?
Yeah, greed is a negative word.
Greed is, love, devotion is...
Seems more appropriate, right?
Desire.
Yeah. What desire can be also negative in many ways. We always say don't have any desire, but actually we should have lots of desires, but we should have spiritual desires.
Correct. So greed connotates like at the expense of others sometimes. That's what's going through my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the word greed is just
is not resonating well with you. Yeah. So remember this. Do you remember the example of the banyan tree? What was the example, Prabhu?
It's inverted. That was the content. Everything you see here, the reflection is inverted. I think that's what I remember at least.
Okay. So there's a banyan tree and it has a reflection. So what does the reflection represent?
The reflection represents the spiritual.
Does it represent the spiritual or does it represent the material, right? Because if you look at a tree on a lake, then the reflection is not perfect. It's like hazy. Yeah, the water's moving, so the reflection. But the original tree looks perfect, as is. So similarly, many people say, well, why did God create bad qualities in this world? He could have just made it good. But this material world is called a perverted reflection, a hazy reflection of the spiritual world. But everything that's in this material world, just like in the reflection, that means that everything is also in the spiritual world. So one may perceive it to be negative here, but that same thing is pure over there. Does that make sense?
I understand that.
So when we apply greed in this world, then you have these connotations in your mind. Oh, greed, it's a negative quality. Oh, greed, it comes at the expense of others. But if we have the pure version of greed, that is spiritual greed, then it comes at no expense to others. In fact, it benefits them. Right? Because anyone who is greedy for Krishna Bhakti is also very generous to give it also. And similarly, having greed for the spiritual desire is absolutely appropriate. There's no issue with that. You can take that with everything. Let me give you one more example to hopefully set this in. Anger. We say anger is very bad, right? Anger is not a good quality. But who can use anger in the service of Krishna? Who used anger in the service? Huh? Balram, how?
Because he used to get mad every time Krishna would get hurt.
He'd get mad, okay. He'd get mad every time when Krishna would get hurt. Any other example? Parshuram. He used anger too. That's the Lord himself, but let's say a devotee. Forget about the Lord getting angry, he can do whatever he likes. But I'm saying a devotee can also be angry. What's an example of that?
He ferociously performs bhakti, his rituals.
Okay, but does he angrily perform bhakti? Not necessarily. What else could he do? In the mood of anger, we say krodh. There's a mood of anger, krodh ras. What is that? Who used that? Example is on the altar. Take an example on the altar. Hanumanji. How does Hanumanji use anger to serve Lord Ram?
He burnt the Lanka.
Yeah. He burnt Lanka down. He was angry at Ravan. And he was angry at the way, and he said, I can actually defeat you right now, but I want to give this to my Prabhu. But in the meantime, I'll burn your entire city down, just to show that even the Das, even the servant of Lord Ram, is so powerful. So using the perceived negative qualities in a spiritual service is absolutely appropriate. Similarly, you can take all of them, greed, anger, envy, pride. All of them can be used in the service of Krishna in a spiritual way. Maybe one day we'll get into other examples of that.
Envy? Last time you said envy shouldn't envy actually.
Yes, because Krishna is saying to Arjuna, you don't have material envy. But there's examples of using envy in a spiritual way also. I think we would get very, very deep into this if we start talking. Even I will go so far, at least on the mic, to say that even lust can be used for the service of Krishna. Because the word for lust in Sanskrit is kam. Kam, right? In this world, we perceive lust in a different way. But the gopis of Vrindavan, they don't perceive it in the same way. Their kam for Krishna is very pure. Very pure. It's transcendental. It has nothing to do with this material world. So in that way, there's many examples of even envy and pride. Even pride can be used. That I am proud to be a devotee of Krishna, and therefore I will serve him in this way. And there's many, many subtle examples for that. So one day, hopefully, we'll get to talk about that. But I do have to cover chapter 11. So can we move on? Yeah. Okay. Last point here is that greed also cannot be taught. It cannot be forced. You cannot force someone to love. In that same way, you cannot force someone to have greed. It simply comes within one's own heart by various different reasons, but two major reasons, either the kripa, the mercy of the Lord himself, or the mercy or the association of one of his premi bhaktas, who is resonating with love throughout their entire self.
So Sukriti does play into that, correct?
Sukriti, yes. So Sukriti does play into that, but that is called Agyata Sukriti, is a different type. Okay. Sukriti related to the Lord. For example, chanting in the park and clapping your hands as though you have no idea what the mantra means.
Okay.
Not the pious activities that refer to charity, helping people. Very nice. Very good point. Very, very good point. So we're getting a little more technical. That's very good. That way we understand it very, very clearly. It's very good. All right, so let's start reading some of the shlokas in chapter 11. Would anybody like to read the verse here?
I can read.
Yes, Prabhu.
Manyase yadi chakyam
Manyase yadi tachakyam
maya drashtum iti prabho
maya drashtum iti prabho
yogesvara tato tato mam tvam
Yogeshvara tato me tvam
darsayat manam avyayam.
darshayatmanam avyayam.
If you think that I am able to behold your cosmic form, O my Lord, O Master of all mystic power, then kindly show me that unlimited universal self.
All right, so we ended with chapter 10, where Arjuna says, tell me more, show me your forms, I want to see everything, I want to know everything. So here in the beginning of chapter 11, then Arjuna is requesting. Notice the words here. What is the first part of this sentence, Prabhu?
If you think that I'm able to behold.
And you mentioned this many times during our class. If you think, Lord, I'm able to behold. See the difference sometimes at least I can speak for myself personally. Oh, I did XYZ things. I did so many malas. I did so much service. I studied so much. Therefore, I deserve to get something. But here, Arjuna, who is a pure devotee, right? He's saying, if you think, Prabhu, I'm ready for this, then I would like to see this universal form of yours. See, the mood of the devotee is very different, very, very nice mood. So if you think that I'm able to behold your cosmic form, then show it to me. So in this regard, Arjuna is requesting the Lord that please, I want to know about that form. Then would anybody like to read the next one? Of course, you see I'm skipping some verses, obviously, to condense it down. Yes, Didi. Natu mam shakyase drashtum ananeva svachakshusha divyam dadami te chakshu Pashya me yogam aishwaram.
The Supreme Lord said, but you cannot see me with your present eyes. Therefore I give you divine eyes. Behold my mystic opulence.
All right, so when one wants to perceive this divine form of the Lord, then he cannot do so with these material eyes. Now there's a very interesting point here. Does Arjuna have material? Let me ask you a question. Does Arjuna have material eyes?
Yes, he does. He's a material body.
Okay, so Krishna is saying, you can't see him with these eyes. I have to give you divine eyes. So then that automatically assumes that Arjuna has material eyes. But is that true? Arjuna is a pure devotee of the Lord. Could he have material eyes? No? He should have?
No, because if he's a pure devotee, then he probably already has it, he just doesn't know.
He just doesn't know? Kind of like when Hanuman doesn't know that he has power?
Or maybe he just isn't, he completely doesn't know himself yet, so he doesn't know that he has that power too.
Okay, but if he's pure devotee, then he should probably know about himself too. So here it's implying that he has material eyes. But one may have the doubt, someone who is very studious and say, wait, how could it be possible that a pure devotee like Arjuna cannot see the form of the Lord? He must need some kind of mechanical action that says, okay, I give you divya drishti, I give you divyam dadami te, like divya chakshu, or divine eyes. But here our acharyas say something very, very interesting, very, very interesting. So we will get into that in just a second, but I want to move towards a few points. But I want you to think about that point. Does Arjuna have material eyes? Okay? In fact, let me step back a second. What does material eyes mean? You said that he does have material eyes, right? What does having material eyes mean?
You're seeing just what's in the Maya. You see yourself as the body, not the spirit. You see everyone else in that form, and the illusion is caught you into it.
Yeah, so absolutely, great.
I'll go more simple. I think it's more, you have a material
Consciousness.
content. Thank you. Thanks for the word. Your body is made of material, matter, condensed energy. So you need to rise, your consciousness has to rise over that.
So now taking that part, do you think that Arjun has material eyes?
Yeah, he has a material body.
No, material body, okay, even if he has a material body, do you think that he's overwhelmed by Maya or illusory potency or...
Understanding that Arjun's past lives as Nar and all the stuff he has done, I'm sure he is very advanced. So he has that ability in him, but he has a material body. So he has to invoke that power to visualize Lord. That's what I'm trying to say in so many words.
Okay, so let's think about that question a little further. That is Arjun covered with some material eyes or material consciousness? Yes, Didi.
When he started, at that time he was attached and he was confused.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So maybe through the process he got rid of that material eyes.
Okay, yeah, and so now he's maybe finally got to some level of process where now Krishna says, okay, you're ready for these divine eyes. Yeah? All right, so now let's think about that again, and let's try it, because this is at least when I read the purport by the acharyas, then I found like this to be very, very extraordinary. So let's continue to read, and then maybe we can find some clarity in this. All right, so the next verse, and would you like to read the translation, Prajot?
O Arjuna, whatever you wish to see, behold at once in this body of mine. This universal form can show you whatever you see, whatever you now desire to see, and whatever you may want to see in the future. Everything, moving and non-moving, is here completely in one place.
All right, so this is a very beautiful painting of the universal form here. Have you guys seen this before? This picture before? It's a very famous picture. And here you can see that the Lord is telling Arjun that you can see everything in this form. Everything. And I wanted to read the translations of the various shlokas, but due to time constraint, I thought, let me just pick and choose a few of them. But here Krishna is telling that, oh, everything is in me. Everything is in me. You name it, it's there. That means past, present, future. He can see the past, present, future. He can see all the universes at one time. He can see all the demigods present. He can see all the demons present. He can see himself present in the universal form. He can see all the people on the battlefield present on the universal form. Everything is present at one time in the universal form. And so you can imagine if something like this was to be seen, then what would happen to you? Huh? You go crazy, right? You go a little crazy because you can't handle everything at once. It is said that, Krishna has created this mind and brain such that you forget your previous lives, but you also even forget a lot of things even within this life. For example, if I asked you, Didi, what did you eat 3 days ago exactly, you'd probably find it a bit difficult to remember exactly what you ate or how much you ate. So this is a gift to us, our loss of memory. So imagine if we were to handle past, present, future of our life, but of everyone's life all at the same time. It's very, very overwhelming. And it puts one, in the purport our acharyas say, that it puts Arjun in wonder. Okay? All right, so I went back into one of the purports, and there Gurudev references the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he references another time where the universal form was discussed. And this universal form was discussed by Vidur and Maitreyi Rishi. Vidur, you guys know? Remember we discussed about Vidur and Vidurani a couple weeks ago? And Maitreyi is whom he goes to after the Kurukshetra war is over. So Vidur, he tells his brother, it's time to leave. Stop eating the food of your those that killed your sons. You remember that? Yeah. And then Dhritarashtra, he uses his anger to try to move him towards spiritual life. So Vidur provokes him like a Kshatriya, saying, how dare you stay in the home of those that killed your sons? So anyways, Dhritarashtra goes and Vidur goes. But Vidur goes to Maitreyi Rishi. And there he says, I want to learn the entire science of devotional service. And in that discussion, Vidur asks Maitreyi Rishi, can you please tell me about that universal form? Because he never saw it, right? He never saw it. So he asks him. And so in that verse he says, Maitreyi Rishi says, the gigantic universal form of the Supreme Lord is the first incarnation. and plenary portion of the super soul. He is the self of an unlimited number of living entities, and in him rests the aggregate creation, which this flourishes. Do you guys remember the 3 Vishnus that we discussed? Does anybody remember any of them? Mahavishnu. Yes, Mahavishnu is the first. Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, number 2.
Third starts with a K, that's why I can't pronounce that.
That's fine. Kshirodakashayi Vishnu is number 3. So the one that breeds unlimited universes, the one that enters into each universe, and the one that enters into each and every person. Just think of it like that. Yeah? So this first incarnation and plenary portion is referring to that Mahavishnu. You can imagine if universes are emanating from him like pores on his body, how huge he is. So similarly, when Arjuna sees the universal form, you can understand how huge he is just by this example. Yes?
So, Vidur Maharaj did see the Virat Roop in Duryodhana's court, right?
Yes, correct. But that was a different Virat Roop. That was a different, again, maybe more technical, but that was a different version of the Virat Roop. And that was only a moment. That was only a moment. Yeah, and only few people saw. Only few people saw. But when he displayed the universal form to Arjuna, it is written, and Krishna says, that no one has seen this form before, the way I'm displaying it to you. Yeah? So at that time it was because Krishna was being attacked by various things, and then he displayed his universal form. Yes?
Very quickly I want to ask.
Yes, Prabhu.
At the end of chapter 10, I think something is said by Krishna that you don't need to know all of this.
Yep.
I'm infinite. I'm in the moment. This is all. You cannot know me.
Yeah.
So is this curiosity that in next Arjuna says, okay, no, I don't need to know everything, but still show me everything. So that was just blinkering in my mind.
What a wonderful question. Beautiful question.
No, that's it's a question actually. It's something beauty about it. How did that not Arjuna not appreciate? I don't need to see all of this. The Lord is saying, this is it. I'm convinced, but he's still asking to see this. So there's a contrast here. Does that make sense?
Yes. Does everybody understand the question? What a very nice question. This is addressed directly by acharyas, so I'll try to repeat what they answered here. There are 2 aspects to this. One we'll get to later, but I'll tell you the first one. The first one is that the devotee is always looking to glorify the Lord. Okay? So he's always looking to glorify the Lord. So Arjuna, because he's a pure devotee, remember, this comes back a little bit to the material eyes question, but this is a lila or a drama enacted by the Lord and his devotee. Why? In order to show the glory of the devotee, to show the glory of bhakti, and to show the glory of the Lord himself. So each one is trying to glorify one or the other. And in this regard, Arjuna is trying to say, oh Krishna, in the last chapter, you told me all these things, but now I want everyone to know, for now and forever time, that this is proven. So therefore, please show me your universal form. All right? But when you see, and I think you already know this, but when we see the reaction to the universal form, that's when we understood some other aspects. So we'll understand that too. Does that answer your question, at least the first part?
Yeah.
All right. So I won't go into reading all of this. I'll just highlight a few points. So in that same conversation with Vidur and Maitreyi, then Maitreyi tells about all the different parts of the universal form. So because you can't take it all in at once, then Maitreyi says, okay, if you go here, you get this, you go here, you get this, you go here, you get this, you go here, you get this. So then he discusses that if, because all the demigods are present in the Lord, in this universal form, then he discusses how each one of those demigods is present there and how they are present in the heavenly planets and then also present within each and every one of us. So for example, Agni Dev, or the fire god, when he enters into his position and he enters the living entity, then the living entity can speak. So it is Agni Dev that allows us to speak. When Varun, or the god of water, enters, then he comes in the mouth and that gives us the ability to taste. when the Lord's two nostrils separately manifest as the Ashwini Kumars, and when they enter into us, then we can smell. And then the two eyes, which separate as the sun, one of them is the sun, the next one is the moon, then the sun enters us and allows us to see. So in this, there's like 40 or 40 verses, I think, where he describes how in every single one of us, in every one of our limbs and every one of our senses, there is a deity or a demigod that is present there. So in this way, you can understand the Lord is the summation of all demigods. All the demigods reside in him. He's the source of everything. But we should understand what is the power, the glory, and our appreciation for those various demigods within each and every one of us. Because without each one of them, we would not be able to do anything actually, right? So again, sometimes we are, as devotees of Lord Krishna, some people say, well, why don't you respect all the demigods? Why don't you honor them, etc.? But actually in each and every one of our actions, we should reflect that, oh, actually it's coming from each one of these deities, each one of these demigods, which ultimately comes from Krishna. So I thought that was interesting that you basically can take a human body drawing and you can pick any part you want and you will see that it is represented by one deity.
I have a question. We were
Yes.
discussing in the morning only. Is Brahma and Shiva also considered demigods?
So we should differentiate between Brahmaji and Shivji, and especially Shivji from any demigod, because Shivji is Bhagavan himself. He's not just he's Dev Adi Dev, not just a Dev, but Dev Adi Dev. But what is he, when we say he's Bhagavan, then do we say, oh, he's like Krishna? No, he's different. So in this, let's take a few minutes and I'll get to that question if you don't mind, because I think I have the verse on the screen, but Shivji is mentioned in this chapter, specifically Brahma and Shivji, as able to behold the universal form, able to behold the four-handed form, and able to behold the human form, unlike the other demigods. So they're very specifically mentioned in this. And also Krishna mentions in the universal form, I think I pulled that verse, that those specific entities are present within me too. So anyway, I'll try to answer more specifically in just a few minutes if that's okay. All right, so this picture here on the left gives some examples, again, of the different Devi Devtas that are present within the universal form. And when Arjuna sees the universal form, then he says, my dear Lord Krishna, I see assembled in your body all the demigods and various other living entities. So again, there's some differentiation here, Didi, that he says demigods, other living entities, and then he says separately, I see Brahma sitting on the lotus flower, as well as Lord Shiva, and all the sages and divine serpents. So they're specifically categorized separately, as opposed to be mixed into the demigods. Yeah? Then Krishna responds. Would anybody like to read this verse? Namrata? Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kalo asmi lokashaya krit pravritto lokan samahartum iha pravritta rita api tvam na bhavishyanti sarve Yeva stitaha prati anikeshu yodaha.
Shri Bhagavan said, I am Time, the mighty destroyer of the worlds, and I am here to annihilate all these people. Even without your efforts, not one warrior in either army will survive.
All right, so when Arjuna is viewing this universal form, imagine if something very huge comes in front of you and you're not able to perceive all of it at once, then what will you do? You'll perceive parts of it as you go along, correct? So Arjuna is first saying, wow, so big, oh my gosh, where do I focus? Then he sees, oh, I see the demigods there. I see other living entities there. I see Brahmaji there. I see Shivji there. And I see the brightness of millions of suns and etc., he describes. Then he says, wow, 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 oh my gosh, it's in wonder. But then suddenly you'll see in this chapter, his mood changes. What does it change to?
He becomes scared.
He becomes scared. He becomes scared because as he's going along, he's seeing so many wonderful things, and then he sees something that makes him scared. And what is that something? Time. Time. Why would time make you scared? If you saw time personified, Kal personified in front of you, why would that make you scared? Because right after he says this, then Arjuna says, I'm very fearful. Why?
You see death, you can see back and front, and that's overwhelming. So you can see your past lives, death, futures.
Yeah, you see death. You see death. And not only do you see your past lives, but you also see others' death. So remember, here Krishna is saying, even without your efforts, not one warrior will survive. Imagine everyone that you love, which he's already scared of, right? That's why he doesn't want to fight. He's seeing all of his loved ones across the battlefield, and then all of a sudden you're seeing their death. And Arjuna actually says, I am seeing great warriors like Bhishma, Karna, Drona, all of these warriors entering into your mouth, being crushed by your teeth. Very scary, very, very scary. And he's seeing all of this play out. So in one sense, he should learn that, wait, this war is already decided. I'm simply an instrument. It's nothing to do with me. I'm not the doer. But in the other sense, he's seeing, oh my gosh, time is going to play out in this way. What will happen? Right? What will happen? So as soon as he sees this Kal, this time aspect of the Lord, that's when he becomes very, very fearful. And so Krishna then instructs him that, hey, I'm showing you the result of this battle right now. Therefore, you have nothing to fear. You have nothing to worry about. You simply, what does he say? O Sabyasachi can be but an instrument. Oh, and you, Sabyasachi, can be but an instrument in the fight. Does anybody know what Sabyasachi? You all know Sabyasachi? Famous brand in India of very expensive clothing. Yeah? Sabyasachi, you might see the celebrities and all wear that. That name came from Arjuna. So another name for Arjuna is called Sabyasachi. Can anybody guess what Sabyasachi must mean? You've never heard of Sabyasachi? Extremely, very, very expensive clothing in India. Traditional clothing like wedding attire.
I don't buy her expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, don't worry. I've never bought it myself, but I have seen it because, anyway, I've seen it in various weddings. But Sabyasachi is a... Sorry? Well-wisher? No, it means expert with all your hands. So someone that can do the same thing with right and left, ambidextrous. So Arjuna, who could shoot with his left hand or his right hand, he was an expert bowman because he had complete control over his, or mastery over his hands. Similarly, a Sabyasachi is an expert tailor or expert craftsman. So that's where the name came from. I thought that was kind of interesting that Krishna refers to him as Sabyasachi.
So Arjuna saw death, and I do agree, time brings emotions, not only yours, but what you're seeing. All has that effect on you. Did he not see the death of Abhimanyu? Because when Abhimanyu died, he told Krishna, today nobody can help my sorrow. There was some dialogue there. And if I'm going on a tangent, then we can talk this later. But that does go through my mind, because then he did lose it many times. He took Pran to kill Jayadratha, and there was lack of or control of emotions that was happening. He was losing his. He just had all of this knowledge a few days ago, and then anger and everything was re-emerging.
So what happens if someone sees... See, let me give you one example and how we can kind of take this. We all know we're going to die, right? Today I'll tell you, Prabhu, at some point you're going to die. It's a very difficult, hard thing to digest. We don't like to hear it, right? But tomorrow you'll go on with your life as if you're not going to die. Correct? Similarly, when Arjuna sees this universal form, he sees everything's going to play out. But then, what does he have to do? Become an instrument in the fight. You cannot live thinking that you will die all the time. Then you won't be able to live. Even though we know it as a fact. We know it as a fact. He knows it as a fact that Abhimanyu will die, that Bhishma will die, and he still cries for Bhishma. He still cries for his guru Dronacharya. But that doesn't take away from his emotional sentiment when this happens. Even though you know the truth philosophically, doesn't mean you don't feel the emotion within the heart. Right?
The logical mind, which is limited, could say if you know and if you've seen it, you will prepare yourself for it. So the acceptance is less emotional. That's where I was coming from.
But not everything is logical.
Fair enough, fair enough.
And number two is, again using the example of death, are we really prepared for death? When it happens, it's not the easiest thing. That's why even very great devotees like Maharaja Kulashekar, he says, Krishna tvadiya padapang. He says, when I'm dying, when I will die, I will suffer from prana, prayana, kapha, vata, all the different elements, kapha, vata, pitta, and my body will be in pain, my mind will be uncontrolled, I won't be able to tolerate it. You can prepare all you want, but if something like death comes, then it's not something that you know how to really prepare for. We can hear it philosophically, but truth is that when death comes, only the person dying knows what they're going through. Right?
Sorry, maybe I'm giving the wrong answer, but my thought is that when even after Arjuna saw all this, if he would have not got angry at Abhimanyu's death, he would have not killed Karna. So that's Lord Krishna's way of playing Maya, because when he asked him to kill Karna, he's like, I can't kill him, he's not on a rath.
Yeah.
And he's like,
don't forget.
Son, Abhimanyu.
Yeah.
He got him more upset. So it's his play of playing this illusion.
Yeah.
It's just because you see the Virat group doesn't mean you're.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think, again, the logic is in one place, but then the sentiment and the emotions still overwhelm us, regardless of how logical it is. For example, when we lose our parents, though they may be 110 years old, the logic tells us they're going to be due. But when it happens, we still feel some pain of separation. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
All right. Let's go. Let's move on. So here, there's one beautiful commentary by Srila Viśvanātha Cakravarti Ṭhākura, and I would just like to highlight this point. Prabhu Kailash, Prabhu, would you like to read it? There is a hidden
meaning to the statement. I have already killed Bhishma, Drona, Jayadatta, Karan and others. Bhagavan is saying that when all the warriors on the side of Kauravas were publicly insulting Draupadi by disrobing her, at that time they were all killed by him because of their erroneous offense to a great devotee. I have made these people stand before you like puppet only to give you fame. It is as if they are already lifeless, just be the instrument in killing them.
So here subtly, Sri Krishna, again, we talked about there are three things always happening in the pastimes of the Lord. The glorification of the Lord, the glorification of bhakti, or the glorification of his devotee. So here, Arjuna in this chapter is trying to glorify the Lord and showing everyone how glorious the Lord is. And the Lord in these actions is also trying to say, oh, but I'm arranging all of this so that your fame is increased. People will think that you did it, and therefore my devotee's fame is increased. So though they're already killed, because once they insult a devotee, we talked about Vaishnava aparad. Madhav Prabhu's question was about aparad. Offense, why does our bhakti get destroyed? And we said that offending a devotee is the number one reason why somebody's bhakti gets destroyed. So similarly, when they offended Draupadi, who was very dear to Krishna, then immediately Krishna said, your death is certain I will simply use my devotee to be an instrument for this. Then Arjuna says, very interesting. So we said Nam, Rup, Guna, Lila. 4 things of the Lord are always glorified. So here Arjuna is saying almost all 4 of those things. Would anybody just like to read the translation? Narendra Prabhu?
O Rishikesha, master of the senses, by glorifying your name, form and qualities, the entire universe becomes joyful and attains attachment to you. The demons scatter out of fear, while the host of perfected beings offer their obeisances to you. Indeed, all this is most appropriate.
So by chanting the names, by glorifying the names or remembering the names of Krishna, the Nam, the Rup, and the Gun, the name, form, and the qualities, then the entire universe becomes joyful. This verse of the Bhagavad Gita is actually, in the commentary it's written, that it's spoken, also repeated in the Upanishads as a, I'll try to remember the name, Rakshas removing, I'll just speak in English, a Rakshas removing mantra. So when one is afraid of the demons or perhaps overwhelmed by demoniac force, then this mantra is to be chanted. So would you guys like to chant this mantra now? Because you guys are always shy to chant these verses. Would anybody like to chant this mantra and we'll repeat? This is a very, very famous verse actually. Yes, Kailash Prabhu. Arjuna Vacha, so this part.
Rishikeshwa Tava
Prakirtya. Sthane Rishikesha Tava Prakirtya.
Jagata Prahasyati Anurajya Te Vacha.
Jagat Prahishyati Anurajyate Cha.
Rakshamsi Bithani Diso Dravanti.
Raksham Shivitani Disho Dravanti.
Sarve Namasyanti Cha Siddha Sangha.
Sarve Namasyanti Cha Siddha Sangha. Very nice. All right, so then Arjuna, after he sees the universal form, he sees time, he becomes scared, then he experiences regret. He experiences regret and he says, hey Krishna, I thought you were just my friend. All this time, I did all these sort of activities like eating with you, sleeping next to you. We joked with each other. I sometimes made fun of you. I sometimes called you by normal names. But now when I see this universal form, I realize who you really are. And I've made such a mistake. Now, going back to that question of the material eyes. The material eyes. So, if Arjuna has material eyes and Krishna gave him divine eyes, right? To see the universal form, then what does Arjuna feel after he sees the universal form? He feels wonder, then he feels fear, and then he feels overwhelmed, and now he feels regret. So after he sees the universal form, he then prays to the Lord, okay, I'm done with this. Oh Lord, I wish to see you in your 4-armed form, with helmeted head and with club, wheel, conch, and lotus flower. I long to see you in that form. So what does that tell you about Divya Drishti, divine eyes? Huh? You don't need it? Okay. Hard to handle. Hard to handle. What else?
I think that they already have a relationship which is very pure, and you feel seeing him in that divine form, you lose it. As you said, the gopis see him as a lover, and Mother Yashoda sees him as his son. So when you get those divine and you see that form, then you don't recognize it, you reject it, because you want to see him in that form in which you have a relationship and love.
Very nice.
There's greed.
So what?
There's greed to see the form that you associate.
There's greed to see the form that you associate with. So when we said Arjuna has material eyes, again, they're very beautiful. Material eyes. Oops. Then he's given divine eyes, the result of which he sees the universal form. The result of which he experiences dissatisfaction. And says, nope, I'd rather see your four-handed form. I'd rather see your four-handed form. And then, when he sees the four-handed form, he says, this is good? No, he says? No, he doesn't say I'm scared, he says?
This is what I want to see.
This is what I would, no, that's what he wants to see now, but after he sees the four-handed form, then he says, can you just go back to your normal form? Can you just go back to the two-handed form that I love and I have affection for? So, divine eyes, this is what our acharyas are trying to say. That divine eyes to see the opulence or the glory of the Lord are not of interest to those who have prem, those who have love for the Lord. Because they're interested in the exchange of love between the Lord and him, his devotee. Can you love or serve or exchange with the universal form if you are beheld in wonder, fear, regret?
Distracted, completely distracted.
You're completely distracted because those opulences take over, but the sweetness gets lost in them. So, in this regard, our acharyas say something very, very interesting. Let's spend a little time discussing that. And would anybody like to read this? Yes, Nārayana Prabhu.
Arjuna is an eternally perfect associate of Sri Krishna. With eyes full of prema, he always sees and relishes the ever-sweet form of Krishna. However, because he has a desire to see the universal form, Bhagwan's giving him divine eyes is discussed here. Transcendental eyes are superior to ordinary gross material eyes, yet these divine eyes are quite insignificant and inferior to the eyes of Arjuna that are full of unalloyed love for Krishna. The universal form of Sri Bhagwan cannot be seen with gross material eyes. It is only visible by divine vision attained by his mercy. Still, the sweetness or madhurya of Sri Bhagwan cannot be seen with ordinary eyes or even with divine eyes.
So what does that tell you about divine eyes?
It's useless to a pure devotee.
It is?
It's useless to a pure devotee.
Useless are quite, well, maybe not word useless, but quite insignificant and inferior to the eyes of Arjuna that are full of love. With eyes full of prem, he always sees that form that he loves. Therefore, sorry.
I was just going to say, actually, when you were talking about whether going to the Rishi and asking and learning about that, I was just thinking in my ignorance that what an insignificant discussion, because he's already seen the Virat room, and instead of falling in love and getting into bhakti, he wants to know more about this. What will he gain out of it, you know?
So when we read that part in Srimad Bhagavatam in 3rd canto, then as he's going through this, then he also goes through what Arjuna is going through. And he then is not interested at all in this opulence aspect. So here the acharyas are saying that not only did Arjuna not have material eyes, his eyes were actually superior to even these divine eyes, which simply give him the vision of this Virat Rup or universal form. So very interesting. And then the next part I thought was also very interesting. Would you like to continue to read this?
Srila Viśvanātha further clarifies this point in his commentary on this verse. Sri Krishna gave Arjuna divine eyes, which were needed to witness his divine universal form, but he did not give him a corresponding divine mind. If he had given him a divine mind, Arjuna would have developed interest in actually relishing the universal form. but upon seeing it, he became disinterested. This is evident by Arjun's words in his state of astonishment upon seeing the universal form. He prayed that Sri Krishna only show him his natural
Sachidanand,
two-armed form.
So here, he gave him divine eyes, but he didn't give him that divine mind. Yeah? Very, very clever, right? When I read this, I was just so, I guess, appreciative, and so it felt so lovely to read these kind of words that our acharyas are pointing out that even if one gets divine eyes, as long as one's consciousness remains transcendental, full of prem, full of madhurya for the Lord, then no matter what the Lord does, we're not attracted, we're only attracted to simply loving Him and that relationship with Him. It has nothing to do with all the power and opulence that He might have. So reiterating that point. So Krishna actually, yes, Prabhu.
So is it good to have a divine mind or not?
What do you think? What do you think? What do our acharyas say? He did not give him a corresponding divine mind. If he had given a divine mind, he would have developed interest. But actually, he became disinterested. What would you rather be?
Without a divine mind.
Without a divine mind. So for the premi bhakta, they're not interested in a divine mind, nor are they interested in divine eyes, or they're interested in Virat Rup. But that's not to say that some other devotees may be interested. And that doesn't mean that, oh, they are terrible devotees, you know. What it is saying that someone who is full of prem has no interest in this. That is the essence of the understanding. Yes, Didi.
My question was, like, we say Hanuman sees Lord Rama as a god glorified. But can we say he doesn't have love? He has. So in that scenario, if you see God as God and still have a lot of love, is that not the right path?
So let's use our words a little wisely. When we said right path, so is Hanuman wrong? Absolutely not, right? Lord Ram loves him more than anybody else, correct? When we are discussing, see, some people may see this as a negative, but some people will also appreciate the understanding. When we are looking at the platform of love in a neutral perspective, unbiased, then we can see there are gradations of prem between the devotees. Gradation doesn't mean one is worse or better. Gradation means that there's some differences, right? Difference doesn't mean worse or better. For each devotee, that is perfect for them. But for example, we gave the example of Madhav, I think, and that is he closer to his mother or is he closer to the person that sees him from far away? He's closer to his mother. So when we are analyzing or studying the love of the devotee for the Lord, naturally one will find himself or herself attracted to a specific type of love. It will happen naturally. I'll give you one example. There's one devotee in this temple. He's a Ram Bhakta. It doesn't matter how many lectures he attends about glories of Krishna. He is a Ram Bhakta. Similarly, in one pastime of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Hanuman takes a form as Murari Gupta. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord himself, is saying, chant Krishna's name. And he goes home and he says, Krishna, 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 Rama, 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 Rama. And then he goes, oh no, I should have said Krishna. Lord told me to say Krishna, 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 Rama, 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 Rama. Then he goes back the next day and he says, Prabhu, I tried. I couldn't do it. I'm just not attracted to Krishna. I'm only attracted to Ram. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, try harder. He goes the next day, same thing happens. Then he goes to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu the next day, he says, Prabhu, I can't follow your order. Better I commit suicide. Since I cannot follow your order, I have no use, I have no service. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu becomes so pleased with him and says, your attachment to Lord Ram's name is perfect. You continue doing that because that is your nature. So when we hear the associates of the Lord, such as Hanuman, which is in Dasya Bhav, or Arjun, which is in Sakhya Bhav, then we hear Vatsalya, which is motherly, parental mood, and then Madhurya, which is lover, beloved. Then one will become more attractive than the other automatically. So it's not that he's worse or not right. It is the level of intimacy that is with the Lord himself. From a neutral perspective, the servant or the maid that may come once a week is appreciated by the Lord, but his friend may be appreciated more. His mother may be appreciated more, and his lover, beloved, may be appreciated more. Does that make sense? But for the mother, she wants only to be his mother. She doesn't care whatever else anyone else does. Does that solve the... Okay. So in this regard, the divine mind, for those devotees who want the divine mind, no problem. But for those devotees who want a more intimate relationship with prem, then they have no interest. All right, so our acharyas also tell us of 3 different instances, and this again goes into sort of the gradations of 3 different instances where Lord Krishna shows his four-handed form. So one is a very interesting pastime, but that I didn't actually know, is, do you all know who Ashwatthama is? Do you know, Didi, who Ashwatthama is?
He's Dronacharya's son.
Yeah, Dronacharya's son. What did he do? Does anybody know? He killed what?
The sons of
Yeah, before that he killed? He killed the sons of the Pandavas. Yeah, at night, in a really terrible way. He just severed their heads while they were sleeping. So when he did that, Draupadi was really upset. And when Draupadi becomes upset, then Bhim becomes really upset. Yeah, and so they set out, Bhim and Arjun set out to go and capture Ashwatthama and bring him back to Draupadi, because Draupadi says, I want him now, bring him to me. So they go and capture him, and they bring him in front of Draupadi. Now, when Draupadi sees him, she sees him as Dronacharya's son and says, oh, we should let him go. We should let him go. He's the son of a Brahmin. After all, it's not appropriate for us Kshatriyas to kill a Brahmin. But then Bhim says, I made a promise to you that I would kill him. So I can't go back on my promise. So they're arguing with each other, and there Krishna, it is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I'd never even noticed this until Gurudev is writing. Then Krishna displays his four-handed form, 2 hands to stop Draupadi and 2 hands to stop Bhim. And he says to Arjun, and then he cleverly tells Arjun how to kill him but not kill him. And that is to remove the jewel from his forehead, from his mata, which is the symbol of all of his pride. And he said that banish him from this kingdom, and that way you are essentially destroying his reputation, destroying his power, which is the same as killing someone. So in that way they're both satisfied, and that event happens where he displays his four-headed form. The other one is a very sweet pastime where Krishna is in Dwarika with his queen Rukmini. You guys know who Rukmini is? The head queen. So one day Rukmini is overwhelmed with love for Krishna and she faints. So Krishna there then displays his four-handed form, and it's described that in 2 hands he catches Rukmini Devi, and with his other 2 hands he caresses her hair and fixes her and then seats her down and makes her conscious again. So that's a very beautiful pastime of four-handed form. Then finally, a very, very sweet pastime. One day if you guys go to Vrajamandal Parikrama, Prajo, do you remember Petha Gao? When we're traveling from Vrindavan to Govardhan, we stop at a few places. There's one village named Petha Gao. And in that place, there's a beautiful pastime where the gopis and Krishna are performing Rasa Leela, but Krishna leaves Krishna leaves the Ras Leela. You like Ras Leela, right, Didi? So Krishna leaves Ras Leela. So when he leaves the Ras Leela, the gopis become very, Devastated, yes, devastated. And they begin searching for him. So they begin searching here and there, and they come across this place called Petagao. And there Krishna decides to play a trick on the gopis. And he sits on one pedestal and he displays his four-handed form in front of them. You know this pastime? So he displays his four-handed form in front of them, and he expects that the gopis will be coming and worshipping him and all that. Instead, the gopis look at this four-handed form and say, oh, okay, oh, this is Narayan. Can you tell us where Krishna is? Can you tell us where our Brajendra Nandan is? We've been looking for him, but we can't find him. And there the gopis come one by one and they're looking, praying, sometimes asking, etc., but have no interest in this four-handed form. Then finally, Srimati Radhika, our Guru Varga described that Srimati Radhika comes, and just from the, how do I say it in English? These beautiful paths, they can only be said in Hindi nicely, you know? Anyhow, a gust of wind touches the veil, or the, what do we call it, the veil? Dupatta, the ghungat of Srimati Radhika, which takes her fragrance to the nostrils of that four-handed form, the Narayan form. And when he smells that Srimati Radhika is coming close, then he's unable to stay in that four-handed form, and the two hands come in, and then Radhika catches him and says, ah, now I have caught you, and now you are ours. So in this way, the four-handed form, again, in these various ways, sometimes performing, we often think of the four-handed form as only like Narayan, Chaturbhuj, but it can also do very many sweet pastimes, many philosophical pastimes, and then Krishna unable to maintain that four-handed form in front of his devotee. Now, Kiran Didi mentioned Mother Yashoda, and we have mentioned this in the class many times, that other devotees have seen the universal form or the universes within the mouth of Krishna, but they have a completely different reaction. And again, we are going back to that point, that even though Sri Krishna is very powerful, bhakti is more powerful than him. And bhakti also, the love or the prem between his devotees and himself, is more overwhelming than any sort of opulence that he may display. So in this regard, the devotees are always interested in that roop, that form, that relationship that they find to be relishable. So, Kamlesh Prabhu, would you like to read this last few verses in the chapter?
Sure. Text 50, Sanjay said to Dhritarashtra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, having spoken thus to Arjuna, displayed his real four-armed form and at last showed his two-armed form, thus encouraging the fearful Arjuna.
Okay, sorry.
51. When Arjuna thus saw Krishna in his original form, he said, O Janardhan, seeing this human-like form, so very beautiful, I am now composed in mind and I am restored to my original nature. Text 52. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Arjuna, this form of mine you are now seeing is very difficult to behold. Even the demigods are ever seeking the opportunity to see this form, which is so dear.
Wonderful. So here Krishna comes back to his original two-handed form, and then he makes a very interesting statement. He said, this form of mine, the two-handed form, you are now seeing is very difficult to behold. Even the demigods are ever seeking the opportunity to see this form. So going back to your question, Kiran Didi, the next verse, I think I have it. No, I don't. Oh, I think I actually had it, yeah. Let's finish this.
Text 53, the form you are seeing with your transcendental eyes cannot be understood simply by studying the Vedas, nor by understanding serious
Undergoing
serious penances, nor by charity, nor by worship. It is not by these means that one can see me as I am.
As I am, yes.
Text 54, my dear Arjuna, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am standing before you, and I can't read.
Can thus be seen.
Can thus be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding.
All right, so here Krishna is saying and reiterating the point that the form that you see normally is one of transcendental eyes. And this form, this two-handed form, it is known as human-like or Naravat. We say Naravat Leela. That this human-like form is very rare. And in the purport, Krishna is saying that only devotees like Brahma or Shiva can see this form of mine amongst the demigods, amongst the gods. Because the demigods are all attracted to the Lord because of his opulence. For example, Indra says, oh, I love the Lord because he protects my kingdom. There's a business there. I love the Lord because he rescues us from the demons. We talked about the Mohini avatar, etc., etc. Their relationship is based on this type of exchange. But Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are premi bhaktas. Their relationship, therefore, they are able to behold the Lord in this two-handed form. So amongst all the three forms that are displayed by Krishna in this chapter, he's saying that this form of mine, the two-handed form, what we think is the most common simple form, is actually the most difficult to behold. And when you know that form, then you really know me as I am. So finally, let's read the last verse of this chapter. Would anybody like to read it? Didi, would you like to read it? Mat karma krin mat paramo mat bhakta sangha varjitaha nirvairaha sarva bhuteshu pandava yaha sa mam eti pandava.
O son of Pandu, he who exclusively dedicates his life to me, considering me alone to be his supreme goal, who engages in the various limbs of bhakti, who is devoid of mundane attachments, and who remains free from enmity towards any living being, he alone attains me.
All right, so with that, the conclusion of this chapter is that one who performs bhakti in a pure way, that who engages in those limbs of bhakti, like chanting, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, who is devoid of mundane attachments, material attachments, and who remains free from enmity, who doesn't have any envy or enmity towards others, that person attains me. So we'll end here, and does anybody have any questions?